GDC 2017, I gave a talk on Night in the Woods and how it used the open source process in its development. In this video, I want to talk about how the talk itself came together and the techniques used to run it. Night in the Woods has a beautiful art style by Scott Benson, and my first thought was to do my slides in that style. That would have worked fine, but while I was talking about this with my friend Paris, he suggested that the richness of the game's look comes as much from the little bits of movement and subtle background elements present in the game. This kind of stuff is really difficult to capture as just an animated picture like a GIF, because it's stuff like how the camera very slightly shifts around all the time, or how some events will happen in the background like a flock of geese flying past. So I realized that the only way to do this properly would be to do it in-engine. Doing that meant that I'd get all the goodness that exists in the scene, including background character animation, camera wobble, background effects, and stuff that I don't even notice is moving in the scene, but you'd miss if it wasn't there. The problem is, Night in the Woods was never designed to be a slideshow system, and so I'd have to modify the game itself to make it work. The simplest way to do this is in a text file. I decided very early on that my slides should be limited to a title, a single image, and some text. I've also been using a tool lately called DeckSet, which reads a text file and presents slides from that. It turns out that lots of people prefer writing their presentations in tools like this, so having an example was really straightforward and easy. So, I wrote a system that was able to read text files that contained DeckSet-like slides. In the text file, each slide is separated by 3 dashes, and each slide can contain a heading, some text, or an image. Slides can also contain presenter notes, which are prefixed with a little caret at the start of the line. I realized that on top of the notes that the presenter is meant to read, I could also embed entire conversations in it. This was really handy, because much of the charm of the game comes from the characters and their conversations, so having the ability to have that in my presentation was fantastic. The presentation itself is a simple UI object that's placed in the world. When the game starts, it runs a script that sets up the camera and positions the characters correctly. It then waits for me to hit the interact button. Every time I hit the interact button, the next slide is shown. This updates the contents of the slide, and if any conversations are associated, that conversation is run. When presenting slides, I find it really useful to have my notes in front of me. Slideshow tools like PowerPoint and Keynote make this really easy, but given that I was building the entire thing from scratch, I had to do this myself as well. The presenter notes are displayed in a UI object that is gigantic and overlays most of the entire world. A camera is aimed at that object and is told to render to a second display. When the game starts, I do a little switch around to show the presenter notes on my laptop's main screen, and the main camera is shown on the second screen, which is the projector. I also added a number of features that make things easier for me as a presenter. A little preview showing what the audience can see, a timer that counts down and shows me how much time I have left, a little indicator showing whether a conversation is happening, which prevents me from moving on to the next slide too soon. Now, making anything as complicated as this thing, with the added pressure of it being done live and at the very first GDC I was presenting at, made me realize I needed some kind of fallback I could use. My goals for the fallback system were something that looked pretty enough and also didn't require a huge amount of work to keep in sync with my main presentation. I ended up using Remark, which is a browser-based system that uses a text-based workflow very similar to what I was already using. All I had to do to make this work was to write a little thing that reads my main presentation document, strips out all the conversations, and then embeds into a web page. I never ended up needing it, thankfully, but it would have worked pretty well, I think. Overall, the whole thing went quite well. People seem to really like the fact that the presentation had all the little visual touches that they've come to expect from Night in the Woods, and the fact that I could have characters interject and talk about the presentation during it was great. I had a really great time building this, and I can't wait to use the same techniques again. If you're interested in more of this kind of thing, please follow me on Twitter, or check out my website at secretlab.com.au. See you next time!